I was arranging a tray of cornbread muffins for the annual Thanksgiving potluck at the community center when my grandson Ethan, his face twisted with contempt, stormed into the kitchen and yelled, "Why don't you just die already?" The words hit like a slap, his voice echoing off the tiled walls. My hands froze mid-task, crumbs falling from my fingers. At 76, I, Grace Harper, a retired school librarian, had poured my life into this family, my savings, my home, my love. Yet here was my own flesh and blood, spitting venom in front of neighbors who turned away, pretending not to hear. I coughed, a dry rasp that had lingered since last winter, and glanced at the kitchen clock. 3:23 p.m. The ticking seemed to mock me, each second amplifying Ethan's words. The community center, usually a haven of chatter and warmth, felt suffocating. I'd spent weeks planning this potluck, hauling groceries in my old hatchback, baking late into the night to uphold our family's tradition. Michael, my son, and his wife Laura stood across the room, laughing with friends, oblivious to Ethan's outburst, or were they? I caught Laura's glance, sharp and fleeting, as if she'd expected this. The sting wasn't just Ethan's cruelty. It was the realization that followed, like a slow poison. I'd given Michael $10,000 last month for emergency repairs on their house, dipping into my retirement fund. Yet their home looked pristine when I visited, no signs of damage. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling, and opened my banking app. A notification glared back. $3,000 transferred to an unfamiliar account, labeled family expenses. My heart sank. They thought I was too old, too frail to notice. The cornbread tray wobbled in my grip, and I set it down, my cough worsening. I stepped outside to the center's porch, needing air. The November chill bit at my knuckles as I clutched my sweater. Memories flooded in a Thanksgiving years ago, when Michael was a boy, his small hand in mine as we strung lights at the town park. We'd laughed, planned the potluck together. Now, that warmth felt like a lie. I flipped open my worn photo album, kept in my purse for moments like this. A picture of that park picnic stared back, Michael's grin wide, Ethan, a toddler, in my lap. My chest tightened, not from the cough but from the ache of betrayal. Had I been blind to their greed all along? Inside, the potluck continued, laughter and clinking glasses a stark contrast to my solitude. I overheard Laura's voice through the open window, smooth and calculated. "Grace is fine, just tired. Let's not bother her. I'd raised Michael alone, after his father died, scrimped to send him to college, mortgaged my house to cover his debts, and now, I was a burden to sideline. I slipped my phone back into my pocket, the banking app still open, its numbers a silent accusation. My cough rattled again, but something else stirred a spark of defiance. I wasn't done yet. Susan Bennett, my book club friend, approached me on the porch, her brow furrowed. "Grace, you look pale. Everything okay?" I forced a smile, muttering about the cold, but her concern lingered like a lifeline. Back inside, I noticed Ethan avoid my gaze, his phone glued to his hand. Michael clapped a neighbor's shoulder, all charm, while Laura refilled her plates. The normalcy of it all infuriated me. They were playing a part, and I'd been cast as the fool. I returned to the kitchen, picking up the cornbread tray. A neighbor, Mrs. Larson, whispered, "Kids these days, no respect." Her eyes flicking toward Ethan, her pity stung, but it also fueled me. I thought of the banking app again, the missing money. I'd trusted Michael with access to my accounts after a hospital stay 2 years ago, never thinking he'd abuse it. My mistake. I wiped my hands on my apron, the fabric worn from years of baking for this family. The clock ticked on. 3:45 p.m. now. Each second a reminder that time wasn't on my side, but neither was it theirs. I carried the tray to the serving table, my steps steadier than I felt. Ethan's words looped in my mind, each syllable a wound. But wounds could heal, or they could scar. I chose the latter. I'd spent decades building this family, sacrificing my own dreams. If they thought they could erase me, they were wrong. I coughed again, the sound harsh, but my eyes were clear. I'd start small, check the bank records, ask questions. Susan's worried glance followed me as I moved through the crowd, a silent promise that I wasn't alone. The potluck carried on, the community center alive with chatter, but I felt detached, like a ghost in my own life. I thought of the park photo again, its edges frayed from years of handling. It was more than a memory, it was proof of what I'd built. what they were trying to take. I slipped the album back into my purse, my fingers brushing the phone. The banking app notifications still glowed, a beacon of truth in their web of lies. I wasn't just fighting for money, I was fighting for my place, my worth. The sun hadn't yet risen when I slipped into the guest room, the only place in my house Michael and Laura hadn't claimed for storage. My fingers brushed a stack of mail on the dresser, and a single envelope slid free, stamped with the logo of a local retirement home. It was addressed to me, unopened, dated 3 days ago. My chest tightened, a familiar cough scraping my throat, but I tore it open. Inside, a glossy brochure touted peaceful senior living, with a handwritten note, "We'll handle this for you, Mom." Laura's cursive, bold and unapologetic. They weren't just taking my money, they were planning to ship me off. I stood frozen in the dim room, the envelope trembling in my hands. The guest room, once Michael's childhood bedroom, still held traces of him, faded baseball stickers on the doorframe. I'd sacrificed my own dreams to keep this house, to give him stability after his father died. Now, Laura's note felt like a declaration. I was no longer part of their future. I stuffed the brochure into my purse, my cough fading under a surge of cold determination. They thought I'd go quietly. They were wrong. I drove to the town library, a brick building with creaky floors and the faint smell of old books. It was a place I'd always found refuge, far from the community center's buzz where Ethan's words had cut me yesterday. Settling at a public computer, I logged into my email, fingers steady despite the early hour. A message from my bank, waited, flagged as urgent, a $4,000 withdrawal, labeled consulting fees, had cleared my savings account overnight. I cross-checked the date. It matched a dinner Laura had hosted, one I wasn't invited to, where she'd bragged about upgrading their lifestyle. My jaw clenched. They were throwing parties while draining my life's work. I printed the email, the printer's hum a stark contrast to my racing pulse. Susan Bennett, my book club friend, had texted last night, checking on me after the potluck. I hadn't replied, but now, I needed her. I dialed her number, pacing the library's quiet aisle. "Susan, they're taking everything," I said, my voice low but firm. "I found a brochure, they want me in a nursing home." Her gasp crackled through the phone. "Meet me at the diner," she said. "Bring what you found." The diner, a small joint on the edge of town with neon signs and vinyl booths, was nearly empty. Susan sat in a corner, her coffee steaming. I slid the brochure and bank email across the table. "They're planning to get rid of me," I said, recounting Laura's note. Susan's eyes widened, then narrowed. "This isn't right, Grace. We'll figure it out." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me from isolation to action. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting to stay in my own life, back home. I slipped into Michael's car parked in my driveway, left unlocked as always. My hands moved quickly, searching the glove compartment. A folded document caught my eye, a contract with a financial advisor. Signed by Michael, promising estate planning services for a hefty fee. The advisor's name, printed in bold, was unfamiliar, but the contract referenced my savings account. My stomach churned. They weren't just stealing, they were building a system to dismantle my independence. I pocketed the contract, my cough a faint echo as I closed the car door. Later, I overheard Laura on the phone in her bedroom, her voice drifting through the thin walls. "She doesn't need to know, Michael. It's better if she's out of the way." My blood ran cold. This wasn't about neglect, it was a calculated plan to erase my role in the family. I thought of the library's quiet aisles, the diner's neon glow, Susan's fierce nod. I wasn't the frail widow they assumed. I'd start with the contract, trace the advisor, and build my case. My fingers tapped my purse, where the brochure lay hidden, a symbol of their betrayal. I sat at my dining table, the house dark except for a single lamp. A memory flickered carving pumpkins with Michael at the town fair, his laughter bright. It hurt, but I pushed it aside. No more nostalgia. I opened my laptop, drafting an email to Susan with the contract's details, my words clipped and precise. I wasn't angry anymore. I was strategic. Laura's voice echoed again in my mind, her callous dismissal a spark to my resolve. That excluded me from their plans, but I'd make sure they couldn't ignore me. The lamp cast a shadow across the table, where a single ticket to the town's annual harvest festival lay, a gift from Susan I'd found in my mailbox. It was a small gesture, but it reminded me of the traditions I'd fought to keep alive. Traditions Michael and Laura mocked as outdated. I tucked the ticket into my purse next to the brochure, a quiet vow to reclaim my place. My cough flared, but I ignored it, focusing on the laptop screen. The email to Susan sent with a soft ping, a step toward justice. Then, a text buzzed on my phone, from an unknown number. Mrs. Harper, we need to discuss your future care. Call us. My heart skipped. The retirement home, already reaching out. Laura's plan was moving faster than I'd thought. I didn't reply, but my fingers tightened around the phone. They'd underestimated me, but the clock was ticking not just on the wall, but on their lies. The bank's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I pushed through the glass doors, my purse heavy, with the retirement home brochure and the financial advisor's contract. I'd driven to the downtown branch, a sterile building with polished counters and the faint smell of ink, to confront the numbers myself. My fingers tapped the counter, waiting for a teller. The text from the nursing home, discuss your future care, still burned in my mind, but I wasn't here to dwell. I was here to act, my resolve as sharp as the pen I clutched. The teller, a young woman with a tight ponytail, slid my ID back with a smile. Joint account balance is $87, Mrs. Harper. My heart didn't race, it froze. I'd saved $62,000, over decades, scrimping for Michael's college, his wedding, his debts. Now, it was gone, funneled into an account Michael controlled. I asked for a transaction history, my voice steady, betraying none of the storm inside. The printout she handed me was a map of betrayal: $5,000 to a car dealership, $8,000 to a furniture store, $10,000 labeled business investment. My cough rattled in my chest, but I swallowed it. Folding the paper into my purse, I drove to a park bench near the town square, the air crisp with late fall. The square, with its cobblestone paths and flickering street lamps, was quiet, a far cry from the community center's chaos or the diner's hum. I spread the transaction history across my lap, my eyes scanning each line. Michael's purchases weren't random, they were a lifestyle I'd funded without knowing. I remembered his casual remark at a family picnic: "We're just modernizing, Mom, you wouldn't get it." Modernizing with my money. My fingers tightened, crumpling the edges of the paper. Susan had agreed to meet me here, her car pulling up minutes later. She sat beside me, her scarf fluttering in the breeze. "Show me," she said, her voice firm. I handed her the transaction history, watching her eyes widen. "They've been bleeding you dry," she whispered, her hand gripping mine. I didn't flinch. The hurt from Ethan's words and Laura's brochure had hardened into something else: clarity. I wasn't just a victim. I was a strategist, mapping their moves. "I need to know how he did this," I told Susan, my tone clipped. She nodded, suggesting I call Tom Reynolds, a neighbor who worked at this very bank. Back home, I dialed Tom from my living room, the curtains drawn to block the afternoon sun. The room smelled of old wood and lavender, a stark contrast to the bank's cold efficiency. Tom's voice was cautious but warm. "Grace, I can look into it, but it's tricky. Michael's name is on the account." I recounted the withdrawals, my words measured. He paused, then said, "There's a joint account opened 2 years ago. After your hospital stay, I'll pull the records." I thanked him, my fingers tracing the armrest. The hospital stay when I'd trusted Michael to handle my finances. My mistake. While waiting for Tom's call, I rummaged through my desk, finding a small keychain from a 4th of July fair, a gift from Michael years ago. It was cheap plastic, stars and stripes faded, but I'd kept it, a reminder of better days. I set it down, refusing to linger. Nostalgia wouldn't help me now. My phone buzzed in. "Grace, it's worse than you thought," he said. "Michael's been routing your savings to a separate account he controls." I found the paperwork. My breath caught, but I didn't waver. "Send it to me," I said, my voice like steel. Tom emailed the documents, and I opened them on my laptop, the screen casting a blue glow across the room. The joint account was a shadow operation. Michael had siphoned my savings, leaving just enough to avoid suspicion. Each transfer was labeled innocently: home repairs, family expenses. I printed the documents, my hands steady. This wasn't just theft. It was a deliberate dismantling of my security. I recalled Laura's voice from yesterday, overheard, through the wall. "She doesn't need to know." They thought I was oblivious, a relic to be managed. I met Susan again that evening at her house. a cozy bungalow with wind chimes on the porch. She poured tea, her hands shaking slightly as she read Tom's documents. "They're stealing your future, Grace," she said, her voice thick with anger. I nodded, my mind racing. I'd confront Michael, but not yet. First, I needed more. That couldn't be dismissed. Susan suggested recording their conversations, but I wasn't ready for that. Instead, I'd track their moves, starting with the financial advisor from the contract I'd found. "I'll call him tomorrow," I told Susan, my words deliberate. She squeezed my arm, a silent vow of support, as I drove home. I passed the town square again, the street lamps now glowing in the dusk. I thought of Michael's dismissal at that picnic, his sneer at my old-fashioned ways. He'd underestimated me, but I was learning his game. Back in my living room, I spread the documents on the table, next to the key.
It wasn't
a symbol of love anymore. It was a reminder of what I'd lost and what I'd fight for. I opened my laptop again, drafting a message to the financial advisor, posing as a curious client. My fingers flew across the keys, each word a step toward justice. Then, my phone pinged with a voicemail from an unknown number. I played it, my pulse quickening. A man's voice, professional and clipped. "Mrs. Harper, this is Dr. Ellis, care consultant. We've scheduled an evaluation at your home next week." My grip tightened on the phone. Laura's plan was moving faster, a direct threat to my freedom. They weren't just after my money, they wanted my life. The laptop screen flickered in the dim light of the public library's study room, a cramped space with musty books and a single window. I clicked through an email from an unknown sender, my fingers steady despite the voicemail from Dr. Ellis still looping in my mind. The email contained a link to a will-making app, claiming I'd updated my estate plan last week. My breath caught. The document loaded, revealing a new will: my house, my savings, all left to Michael, with no mention of the college trust I'd set up for Ethan. My heart didn't race, it hardened, my resolve shifting to a fierce, unyielding focus. I printed the document, the printer's hum cutting through the silence. The will was a lie, crafted through an online app I'd never used, my signature digitally forged. I'd spent decades building that trust for Ethan, scrimping to ensure his future, yet Michael had erased it to claim everything. I recalled his dismissive tone at a family barbecue, his voice sharp. "Mom, your plans are outdated. We'll handle things now. Handle things." He was rewriting my legacy. I folded the paper, tucking it into my purse next to the bank records Tom had sent. I stepped outside to the library's courtyard, a small patch of grass with a weathered bench. The air was crisp, the scent of fallen leaves sharp. I sat, pulling out my phone to call Susan. "They've faked my will," I said, my voice low but firm. "Everything goes to Michael, not Ethan." Susan's silence was heavy. Then she said, "Come to my office. We need to plan." Her tone was a lifeline, pulling me deeper into the fight. I wasn't just protecting my money, I was reclaiming my voice. Susan's office, a small real estate agency downtown with glass walls and coffee stains, buzzed with quiet energy. She closed the door, her eyes scanning the forged will. "This is fraud, Grace," she said, her pen tapping the desk. "You need to lock down your accounts." I nodded, my mind racing. The will wasn't just a theft, it was a betrayal of my values, my promise to Ethan. I'd raised Michael alone, sacrificed my own dreams, yet he'd turned my care into a weapon. Susan suggested contacting the app's support to trace the account, and I agreed, my fingers already drafting an email on my phone. Back home, I slipped into the garage, where Michael kept his work files. The space smelled of oil and dust, a far cry from the library's musty air or Susan's polished office. I rifled through a box labeled taxes, my hands quick but careful. A flash drive caught my eye, tucked inside an envelope. I plugged it into my laptop, my pulse steady. It held scanned copies of the forged will and emails between Michael and an unknown address, discussing finalizing the estate. My jaw tightened. This wasn't a spur of the moment act, it was a calculated plan to erase my control. I copied the files to my email, sending them to Susan with a note, proof of the forgery. My cough flared, a low wheeze, but I ignored it, focusing on the screen. I remembered a 4th of July picnic, Michael helping me set up a lemonade stand for Ethan. The memory stung, but I pushed it aside. Sentiment wouldn't win this fight. I needed evidence, allies, a strategy. Susan texted back, "Got it. Call the app company tomorrow. I'll find a lawyer." Her words fueled me. A reminder I wasn't alone. I drove to a local cafe, a quiet spot with wooden tables and the hum of an espresso machine. Susan met me there, bringing a notebook filled with questions for the app company. "They'll have logs," she said, her voice sharp. "We'll find who accessed your account." I nodded, my fingers tracing the edge of a napkin, a relic from last year's town festival. It was a small thing, printed with a star pattern, but it grounded me, a reminder of the traditions Michael mocked. I tucked it away, my resolve unwavering. Later, I overheard Michael on the phone in his room, his voice low through the wall. "She won't check anything, Laura. The will's set." My blood surged, but I stayed silent, slipping back to my laptop. I drafted another email to the app company, posing as a confused user, asking for account details. Each word was deliberate, a step toward exposing their lies. I wasn't just fighting for my house, I was fighting for the future I'd planned for Ethan, the legacy they'd tried to steal. Susan called as I finished the email, her voice urgent. "Grace, I found someone, Diane Foster, a lawyer. She'll meet us tomorrow." I thanked her, my tone calm but fierce. The cafe's lights flickered, casting shadows on the table. I thought of Michael's words, his casual dismissal of my life's work. He'd underestimated me, but I was closing in. The napkin lay in my purse, a quiet symbol of the traditions I'd fought for, now fueling my fight. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a new email from the will-making app. My fingers tightened on the wheel. The response was brief. "Account accessed via an IP address linked to your son's email." My breath caught, not from shock, but from confirmation. Then, another message arrived, this time from Laura's phone, sent to me by mistake. "Michael, the lawyer says we need her signature soon, or the plan falls apart." My eyes narrowed. Their scheme was deeper than I'd thought, and they were running out of time. Laura's voice cut through the stillness of the morning, sharp and impatient, as I lingered outside her home office door. "The consultant's coming tomorrow, Michael. She'll sign off on the evaluation." I froze, my hand on the doorknob, the words sinking like stones. The evaluation wasn't for a job or a loan, it was for me. A step to strip away my autonomy. My cough rasped, but I swallowed it, my mind racing with a new emotion, not anger or focus, but a steely defiance, a refusal to be erased. I slipped back to my car, parked down the street from their house, a quiet suburban corner with manicured lawns and chirping birds. The morning air was cool, the street empty. I pulled out my phone, opening the banking app. A new alert glared. A mortgage application on my house, flagged as pending review. My home, where I'd raised Michael, carved pumpkins for Ethan, hosted decades of Thanksgivings. The application listed Laura as cosigner, claiming it was for family expansion. I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. They weren't just rewriting my will, they wanted my home. I drove to the town's community garden, a patchwork of flower beds and wooden trellises, its earthy scent grounding me. Sitting on a bench, I called Susan, my voice steady but sharp. "Laura's hired someone to declare me incompetent," I said, forwarding the mortgage alert. "They're trying to take my house." Susan's breath caught. "Meet me at the credit union," she said. "We'll stop this." Her urgency mirrored my own, a shared resolve to fight back. I wasn't just protecting my property, I was defending my right to exist at the credit union. A small office, with frosted windows and the hum of a coffee machine. Susan waited with a notepad. I showed her the mortgage alert, my fingers tapping the table. "They're moving fast," I said. Susan nodded, scribbling notes. "We need to freeze your accounts and check the consultant's credentials." I agreed, my mind already plotting. The consultant, likely Dr. Ellis from the voicemail, was a hired gun to label me unfit. I'd outmaneuver them, starting with the bank. A teller directed us to Tom Reynolds, who was already digging into my accounts. His office, tucked behind a glass partition, smelled of paper and lemon cleaner. "Grace," he said, his voice low, "the mortgage application was filed yesterday, using your name. Laura's listed as your caregiver." My stomach twisted, but I didn't flinch. Caregiver. Laura, who hadn't called in months, who skipped my birthday. Tom handed me a document, a power of attorney form, dated last week, with my signature, forged. My defiance surged, a fire that burned away doubt. "Can you block it?" I asked. Tom nodded. "I'll flag it as fraud, but we need more proof." Back at my house, I searched my attic, a dusty space with creaking floorboards and boxes of old letters. My fingers brushed a holiday card from Ethan, scribbled when he was 10, "Love you, Grandma." I set it aside, refusing to soften. The card, with its faded snowman, was a relic of a bond they'd shattered. I found a file labeled property, containing my deed still in my name alone. Relief washed over me, but it was fleeting. Laura's plan was clear: declare me incompetent, seize control, and mortgage my home. I called the nursing home listed in the brochure, posing as a concerned family member. The receptionist was chatty. "Dr. Ellis is meeting Mrs. Harper tomorrow to assess her capacity." My grip tightened on the phone. "Capacity for what?" I pressed. "To ensure she's safe living alone," the woman said, her tone practiced. Safe? I lived in my home for 40 years, cooked for neighbors, tended my garden. This was no safety check, it was a setup. I thanked her, my voice calm, and hung up, already planning my next move. Susan met me at a local bakery, its warm lights and cinnamon aroma a stark contrast to the attic's dust. We sat in a corner booth, the holiday card tucked in my purse. "We need to catch them in the act," Susan said, her eyes fierce. "Can you stall the consultant?" I nodded, drafting a text to Dr. Ellis from my phone. "Need to reschedule. Due to illness." It bought me time, but not much. Susan suggested contacting a lawyer, mentioning Diane Foster, who specialized in elder fraud. "I'll call her tonight," I said, my words clipped, my defiance unyielding. Later, I overheard Ethan in the living room, his voice low on a phone call. "Mom says it's for Grandma's own good. She can't live alone." My heart stung, but I pushed it down. Ethan wasn't the boy who'd drawn that card, he was their pawn. I slipped into my study, a small room with bookshelves and a worn rug, and opened my laptop. I emailed Diane Foster, attaching the mortgage alert and power of attorney form, my fingers moving with precision. Each click was a strike against their plan, a reclaiming of my life. As I finished, my phone buzzed with a reply from Dr. Ellis, rescheduling for Friday. "We'll need family presence." My jaw tightened. They were closing in, but I was ready. I thought of the holiday card, its snowman, a fleeting symbol of a family lost. I tucked it away, my focus razor sharp. They wanted me gone, but I'd fight. With every tool, I had bank alerts, documents, allies. Susan's voice echoed in my mind, her fierce support a beacon. I wasn't just saving my home, I was saving myself. Then, a knock at my door startled me. I opened it to find a courier, young and nervous, holding an envelope. "For Mrs. Harper," he said, handing it over. Inside was a notice from the bank. The mortgage application had been expedited, with a hearing set for next week. My breath caught. Laura and Michael weren't waiting, they were pushing to lock me out before I could fight back. The post office's fluorescent lights buzzed as I slid a certified letter across the counter, my fingers brushing the envelope's edge. It was addressed to the bank, a formal request to freeze my accounts, drafted with Susan's help. The clerk stamped it, oblivious to the weight of its contents. The notice about the expedited mortgage hearing, delivered yesterday, still burned in my mind, but I wasn't shaken. My resolve had shifted to a quiet, relentless precision. Like a chess player plotting 3 moves ahead, I drove to a local notary office, a small storefront with peeling paint and a faint smell of ink. The bank notice had referenced a mortgage contract, and I needed answers. Inside, a clerk handed me a copy of the document, obtained through Tom's discreet pull from bank records. My eyes scanned the page, my signature, scrawled at the bottom, but it wasn't mine. Michael had forged it, authorizing a $200,000 loan against my home. My cough flared, a low rasp, but I steadied my breath. This wasn't just theft, it was an attempt to erase my independence. I met Susan at a nearby park, a quiet stretch of green with a duck pond and creaking swings. The autumn air was sharp, leaves crunching underfoot. I showed her the forged contract, my voice low but firm. "Michael signed my name to mortgage my house," I said, handing her the document. Susan's eyes narrowed, her fingers tracing the fake signature. "This is criminal, Grace," she said. "We need Diane Foster now." I nodded, my mind already mapping the next steps. I wasn't just fighting for my home, I was dismantling their lies. Susan drove us to Diane's law office, a sleek building with glass doors and the hum of a printer. Diane Foster, a lawyer with sharp eyes and a nonsense tone, greeted us. I laid out the evidence, the bank records from Tom, the forged will, the power of attorney, and now the mortgage contract. Diane's pen tapped the desk as she studied. The signature, "This is fraud, but we need to prove intent," she said. "Can you get more?" I nodded, my precision unwavering. I'll find it, I said, my words a vow. Back home, I slipped into Michael's study, a cluttered room with bookshelves and a locked filing cabinet. The house was silent. Laura and Ethan, at a school event I wasn't invited to. Using a paperclip, I jimmied the lock, my hands steady despite the risk. Inside, I found a notarized copy of the mortgage contract, stamped and dated last week, alongside a sticky note in Michael's handwriting. Push for quick close. My jaw tightened. They weren't just planning, they were executing, fast. I photographed the contract and note with my phone, sending them to Diane via a secure email. My cough rattled, but I ignored it, focusing on the task. I remembered a Labor Day barbecue, Michael grilling, while I set the table, his smile warm. The memory stung, but I buried it. Nostalgia was a distraction. Evidence was my weapon. Diane texted back, "This is gold. Meet me tomorrow to file a fraud claim." Her confidence fueled me, a reminder that my fight was gaining ground. I drove to a local diner, a retro spot with checkered floors and the clink of dishes. Susan joined me, her notebook open. "We need to catch them off guard," she said, sipping coffee. I agreed, suggesting a meeting with Michael and Laura, framed as a family discussion about my health. "I'll ask about the mortgage," I said, my tone calculated. "They'll slip." Susan nodded, her eyes fierce. "Record it if you can, but be careful." I pocketed my phone, its camera app ready, a tool I'd learned to wield. At home, I set up the meeting, texting Laura, "Need to talk about my health. Tomorrow, my place, 6 p.m. She replied instantly, "Of course, Mom. We're worried about you." Her words dripped with false concern, but I didn't flinch. I spent the evening reviewing Diane's advice, memorizing key questions to trap them. My study, with its worn desk and flickering lamp, became my war room. I found a small locket, a gift from Michael's high school graduation, tucked in a drawer. Its silver gleam mocked me, a relic of a bond now broken. I set it aside, my focus razor-sharp. The next morning, I met Diane at her office, the air thick with the scent of paper and coffee. She reviewed the photos, her expression grim. "This note ties Michael directly to the fraud," she said. "If they admit anything at your meeting, we're set." I nodded, my precision guiding every move. I wasn't just gathering evidence, I was building a case to reclaim my life. Diane handed me a legal pad, her handwriting outlining steps to revoke the forged documents. "You're stronger than they think," she said. Her words landed like a spark, igniting my resolve. As I left Diane's office, I overheard Michael's voice from a nearby cafe, his tone smugged. "The bank's pushing the mortgage through. She won't fight it." My blood surged, but I stayed calm, slipping into the cafe as shadow to listen. Laura replied, "Good. Once she's in the home, it's ours." My fingers tightened around my phone, recording their words. I didn't confront them yet. Instead, I sent the audio to Diane, my movements swift, precise. They thought they'd won, but I was steps ahead. Back home, I prepared for the meeting, setting out chairs in my living room. The locket lay on the table, a fleeting symbol of what I'd lost, but I ignored it, focusing on the plan. My cough flared, but my hands were steady, arranging the room like a stage. Michael and Laura would walk into my trap, unaware of the evidence piling against them. Susan texted, "Be safe, Grace, we're with you." Her support anchored me, a reminder I wasn't alone. Then, my phone buzzed with an email from the bank. "Mortgage hearing moved to tomorrow. Urgent response required." My pulse quickened. They'd accelerated the timeline, betting I'd missed the deadline. My eyes narrowed, defiance burning brighter. They wanted a fight, and I was ready. Margaret Lane's voice crackled through the phone, sharp with urgency. "Grace, I found something in your bank records. Meet me now." I hung up, my fingers tightening around the device. The bank's email about the accelerated mortgage hearing still fresh in my mind. I wasn't rattled. My resolve had sharpened into a cold, calculated certainty, a hunter closing in on prey. I grabbed my coat and headed out, the morning air biting at my knuckles. I met Margaret at her home office, a cozy room with oak shelves and the faint scent of peppermint tea. A retired accountant, she'd offered to review my financial records after Susan vouched for her. Papers were spread across her desk, marked with red ink. "Laura transferred $2,500 from your account to a Dr. Ellis last week," Margaret said, pointing to a highlighted transaction. My cough rasped, but I steadied myself. Dr. Ellis, the care consultant Laura hired to deem me incompetent. My home, my savings, all targeted by their greed. I sat, studying the transaction. The payment was labeled medical consultation, a lie to mask their scheme. They're paying her to lie about me, I said, my voice low but firm. Margaret nodded, her glasses glinting. There's more. The transfer was made the day before the mortgage application. My jaw tightened. Laura wasn't just complicit. She was orchestrating, using my money to fund their plan. I wasn't just fighting for my house. I was exposing their web of deceit. Margaret handed me a printed bank statement, the evidence stark. I photographed it with my phone, sending it to Diane Foster, my lawyer. This ties Laura to the fraud, I told Margaret, my tone clipped. She suggested digging into Dr. Ellis's background, and I agreed, my mind already plotting. I'd meet Diane later, but first, I needed more leverage. Susan had mentioned Peter Walsh, a tech-savvy neighbor who could help with surveillance. I texted him, need help with a camera, urgent. I drove to a local hardware store, a cavernous space with fluorescent lights and the clang of metal. Peter met me in the security aisle, his toolbox in hand. You want a camera? He asked, eyeing me curiously. I nodded, explaining my need to monitor my porch without mentioning details. He recommended a simple Ring camera, easy to install, and linked to my phone. I'll set it up today, he said, his tone reassuring. I paid for the device, my fingers brushing a keychain display, a tiny wrench. A nod to the tools I was wielding. I pocketed it, a symbol of my growing arsenal. Back at my house, Peter installed the camera above my front door, its lens glinting in the sunlight. You'll get alerts on your phone, he said, showing me the app. I thanked him, my certainty unwavering. The camera wasn't just for safety, it was a trap, ready to catch Laura or Michael in a careless moment. I recalled a Memorial Day picnic, Laura laughing as she poured lemonade, her warmth a mask. The memory stung, but I pushed it aside. Sentiment wouldn't win this fight. I met Diane at a coffee shop, a quiet spot with exposed brick and the hum of a milk steamer. She reviewed the bank statement, her eyes narrowing. This payment is damning, she said, scribbling notes. We can use it to challenge the mortgage and the evaluation. I nodded, my mind racing. I'd confront Laura and Michael at the meeting tonight, using their own lies against them. I'm recording it, I told Diane, tapping my phone. She cautioned me to stay calm, but my certainty burned bright-eyed. Stay sharp, not emotional. At home, I prepared for the confrontation, setting out teacups in my dining room, a formal touch to unsettle them. The wrench keychain lay on the table, a quiet reminder of my resolve. I tested the Ring camera, its app pinging with a clear view of my porch. My cough flared, but I ignored it, focusing on the plan. I'd ask about Dr. Ellis, the mortgage, and watch their reactions. Diane had coached me, push for specifics, but don't accuse outright. My questions were ready, each one a blade. Laura and Michael arrived at 6 p.m., their smiles tight. We're worried about your health, Mom, Laura said, her voice syrupy. I poured tea, my hand steady. I heard about a Dr. Ellis, I said, my tone casual. Why was my money used to pay her? Laura's cup clattered, her eyes darting. To Michael, it's for your care, he said, too quickly. I pressed, mentioning the mortgage, and Michael's jaw twitched. You're confused, Mom, Laura snapped, her mask slipping. I didn't flinch, my phone recording silently in my pocket. After they left, I uploaded the audio to Diane's secure server, my fingers swift. The conversation hadn't yielded a confession, but their unease was clear. I checked the Ring app, finding a clip from earlier, Laura on my porch, glancing around nervously before slipping a flyer for the nursing home under my mat. My blood surged, but I stayed calm, saving the footage. This wasn't just evidence, it was proof of their intent to isolate me. I drove to Margaret's house again, the streetlights casting long shadows. She was waiting, her laptop open. I cross-checked your accounts, she said. Laura's been routing small transfers to an offshore account, likely for Ellis's fees. My eyes narrowed. The offshore account was new, a layer of deception I hadn't seen. I thanked Margaret, sending the details to Diane. My plan was clear, gather every thread of their scheme, then pull it apart. As I left, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Grandma, why are you making things hard? Just move to the home. My heart twisted, but my certainty held firm. He wasn't my ally, he was theirs, shaped by their lies. I didn't reply, my focus on the wrench keychain in my purse, a tool of my fight. The Ring camera's app pinged again, showing a late-night visitor, Michael, pacing my porch, his face tense. What was he planning? Then, Diane called, her voice urgent. Grace, the bank's pushing the mortgage approval despite our fraud claim. They're citing a new document, your consent to the loan. My grip tightened, another forgery, and they were moving faster than I'd thought. The Ring camera's app pinged on my phone, its sharp chimes slicing through the quiet of my kitchen. I tapped the screen, my fingers steady, revealing a new clip from my porch. Laura, pacing in the dusk, muttering into her phone. The bank's latest forgery claim. My consent to the mortgage still burned in my mind, but I wasn't shaken. My resolve had crystallized into a fierce, unyielding triumph, the thrill of closing in on their lies. I played the clip, Laura's voice faint but clear. We kept her out of Ethan's birthday on purpose. Michael, she's too nosy. My breath caught, not from shock but from victory. This was it, proof. They'd deliberately isolated me. A confession to bolster Diane's case. I saved the footage, my cough a low wheeze, and emailed it to Diane with a note. Laura admits to exclusion. More to come. My triumph surged, a fire that burned away years of doubt. I wasn't just surviving their scheme, I was dismantling it. I drove to a local bookshop, a cozy nook with creaking shelves and the scent of old pages, to meet Susan. The morning light filtered through stained glass, casting colors on the floor. I showed her the Ring clip on my phone, my voice low but firm. Laura confessed to cutting me out, I said. Susan's eyes widened, then narrowed. This is huge, Grace, she said, gripping my arm. Diane can use this to show intent. I nodded, my mind racing. The footage wasn't just evidence, it was a weapon to expose their cruelty. Susan suggested meeting Peter Walsh again to optimize the Ring camera's settings. I texted him, arranging to meet at my house. As I left the bookshop, I slipped a bookmark into my purse, a simple strip embossed with a quote from a town poetry reading. Truth cuts sharper than steel. It was a fleeting symbol of my fight, grounding me. I drove home, the bookmark tucked beside the wrench keychain, my resolve unyielding. Peter arrived at my porch, his laptop open. Let's tweak the motion zones, he said, adjusting the Ring app. Reviewed older clips, finding another gem. Michael dropping off a nursing home brochure at midnight, his face tense. I saved it, my fingers swift. You're getting good at this, Peter said, half smiling. I didn't smile back. My triumph was too fierce for levity. The camera, once a precaution, was now my sentinel, capturing their every misstep. I met Diane at her law office, a modern space with frosted glass and the hum of a copier. She played the Laura clip, her pen tapping the desk. This shows intent to isolate, she said, combined with the payment to Dr. Ellis and the forged documents. We're building a strong case. I handed her the Michael clip, my voice steady, his delivering their propaganda. Diane nodded, her eyes sharp. We'll file for an injunction to stop the mortgage tomorrow. My triumph flared. I wasn't just fighting, I was winning. Back home, I set up a video call with Margaret, her face appearing on my laptop screen from her oak-paneled office. I found another transfer, she said, holding up a bank statement. $1,000 to Dr. Ellis, labeled follow-up. It's from your account, dated yesterday. My jaw tightened. Laura was still siphoning my money, even as I closed in. I emailed the statement to Diane, my fingers precise. I recall the 4th of July fair, Laura helping Ethan with a ring toss, her laughter warm. The memory stung, but I buried it. Their betrayal fueled me now. I prepared for a final confrontation, inviting Laura and Michael to my living room under the guise of discussing my future. The room, with its faded wallpaper and oak table, felt like a courtroom. I tested the Ring camera, its app pinging with a clear view of my porch. My cough rasped, but I ignored it, arranging chairs with care. I'd play the Laura clip if needed, forcing them to face their words. Diane had warned me, stay calm, let them dig their hole. My questions were ready, each a trap. They arrived at 7 p.m. Laura's smile forced, Michael's eyes darting. We want what's best for you, Laura said, sitting stiffly. I poured coffee, my hands steady. Why wasn't I at Ethan's birthday? I asked, my tone neutral. Laura faltered, glancing at Michael. You were tired, he said, too quickly. I pressed, mentioning Dr. Ellis's payments, and Laura's cup trembled. It's for your health, she insisted, her voice cracking. My phone recorded silently, capturing their unease. After they left, I uploaded the audio to Diane's server, my triumph burning bright. The conversation hadn't yielded a full confession, but their panic was palpable. I checked the Ring app again, finding a new clip. Ethan, late at night, taping a nursing home flyer to my door, his face conflicted. My heart twisted, but my triumph held firm. He wasn't my grandson anymore, he was their tool. I saved the clip, sending it to Diane with a note. Ethan's involved. I drove to a local park, a quiet expanse with a gazebo and frost-tipped grass, to meet Susan one last time. The bookmark lay in my purse, its quote a mantra. Susan hugged me, her voice fierce. "You're unstoppable, Grace," she said. I nodded, my mind on the injunction hearing tomorrow. The evidence, ring clips, bank statements, forged documents, was overwhelming. I wasn't just reclaiming my home, I was rewriting my story, proving my strength. As I left the park, my phone buzzed, with a voicemail from an unknown number. I played it, my pulse quickening. A woman's voice, clipped and professional. "Mrs. Harper, this is Dr. Ellis. We're proceeding with your evaluation despite your absence. A report will be filed tomorrow." My eyes narrowed. They were pushing forward, betting I'd crumble under pressure. They were wrong. Diane Foster's heels clicked on the courthouse floor, her briefcase swinging as she led me through the polished halls. The injunction hearing was minutes away. Dr. Ellis's voicemail about her evaluation report still echoing in my mind. I wasn't nervous. My resolve had hardened into a calm, unshakable conviction, a warrior stepping into battle with every weapon honed. My cough rasped, but I straightened, ready to face Michael and Laura. The courtroom, a stark room with wooden benches and a faint musty scent, buzzed with tension. Diane laid out our evidence, the Ring camera clips of Laura's confession and Michael's late-night deliveries, the bank statements showing payments to Dr. Ellis, the forged will, the fake power of attorney, and the mortgage contract with my stolen signature. I sat, my hands folded, watching Michael's face pale as Diane played Laura's voice. "We kept her out of Ethan's birthday on purpose." The judge's eyes narrowed, his pen pausing. "Mrs. Harper," Diane said, her voice sharp, "did you authorize these transactions or documents?" I stood, my voice clear. "No. My son and daughter-in-law forged my signature and stole my savings." Laura shifted, her eyes darting to Michael, who stared at the floor. The judge ordered the mortgage frozen and Dr. Ellis's report dismissed, citing fraud. Diane squeezed my hand, her smile tight. "We've won this round," she whispered. My conviction burned. I'd saved my home, but this was only half the fight. After the hearing, I met Susan at a local tea shop, a quaint space with floral curtains and the clink of porcelain. I showed her the court order, my fingers steady. "They're exposed," I said, my tone even. Susan's eyes gleamed. "You've turned their game against them," she said. I nodded, my mind already on the next step. The court had protected my house, but my savings were gone, and my family ties were severed. I wasn't just reclaiming assets, I was redefining my legacy. I drove to a community center, a brick building with a mural of sunflowers, to meet Margaret and Peter. They'd helped me compile the evidence, and I owed them clarity. "I'm donating half my estate," I said, handing them a draft will I'd written with Diane, to an organization protecting seniors from fraud. Margaret's pen stopped, her eyes soft. "That's powerful, Grace," she said. Peter nodded, his voice gruff. "You're making sure no one else goes through this." I smiled faintly, my conviction unshaken. This wasn't revenge, justice, broader than my pain. Back home, I sat in my garden, a quiet corner with rose bushes and a stone bench. I held a small gardening trowel, a gift from a long-ago neighbor, its handle worn smooth. It was a symbol of my roots, my fight to stay planted. I'd found it while tending my roses, a reminder of the life I'd built. My cough flared, but I ignored it. Drafting an email to the senior advocacy group, I attached the court documents and my donation pledge, my fingers swift. This wasn't just about MIT, it was about others betrayed by those they trusted. I met Diane again at her office, the air thick with paper and ink. She reviewed my donation plan, her expression approving. "This will fund legal aid for seniors," she said. "Your story could inspire others." I nodded, my voice firm. "I want it public. Let people know what they did." Diane agreed, suggesting a press release. I emailed a local reporter, sharing my evidence and the court's ruling. My story wasn't just mine anymore, it was a warning, a beacon for those silenced by family greed. Later, I walked to the town square, a cobblestone plaza with a bubbling fountain. Susan joined me, her scarf fluttering in the breeze. "You've changed everything," she said, her voice fierce. I nodded, my eyes on the fountain's ripples. I thought of Ethan's birthday, the Thanksgiving photo in the park, moments now, tainted by their betrayal. The pain lingered, but my conviction held stronger. I wasn't the frail widow they'd dismissed. I was a force, rewriting my ending. That evening, I sat in my living room, the gardening trowel on the table. I opened my laptop, finalizing the donation. The Ring app pinged, showing a new clip. Michael, standing on my porch, his face drawn. He didn't knock, just left a note under my mat. I retrieved it, my hands steady. It read, "Mom, we're sorry, can we talk?" My jaw tightened. An apology, too late, too hollow. I tucked the note away, unswayed. Their words couldn't undo their actions. Then, my phone buzzed with an email from the advocacy group. "Your donation will launch a statewide campaign against elder fraud." My conviction swelled, a quiet victory. But another message followed, from an unknown sender. "Mrs. Harper, we're watching your case. You've made enemies." My pulse quickened, not from fear but from awareness. My fight had ripples, and someone was pushing back. I sit in my garden now, the roses blooming despite the autumn chill. My journey began with Ethan's cruel words, a stab that woke me from my trust. Each step uncovering Michael's joint account, the forged will, Laura's payments, the fake mortgage was a battle against betrayal. I learned a hard truth. Family isn't defined by blood, but by respect. Those closest can wound the deepest, not with shouts, but with calculated silence, stripping your voice while claiming love. For those of you facing this, know your worth isn't tied to their approval. Fight with facts, allies, and the tools at handbank apps, cameras, your own clarity. You're not alone. Two others betrayed, I say. Stand firm, reclaim your story, and turn pain into purpose. Your strength can light the way for others. My home is mine again, my legacy secured, not for me, but for those who face this fight next. Subscribe to this channel to support stories of resilience like mine.